welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Thursday, everybody. I hope your week is off to a great start. And I guess technically we're coming to the end of the week, so I hope it's been going well. We are back at it with another video, and I want to check in with everybody and see how you guys are doing today. All right, we've got some really interesting astrology in the mix today and tomorrow. So buckle up. We're going to be talking about Pluto going direct in Capricorn. This is the final boss battle. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, click the bell button below. Subscribe to my channel. That way you're alerted as to when I have new videos out. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday using tarot as well as astrology to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. All right, well, guys, very, very, very interesting astrology. I just want to let you know there's lots of other information on my channel. If you guys have been following along, we have been talking in this last month about Pluto in the final moments of 29 degrees of Capricorn. It feels critical, it feels intense. There is a lot of energy building, and what a great day to talk about it as the moon in Capricorn is approaching the conjunction to Pluto, all right? And then tomorrow, on the 11th of October, Pluto goes direct in Capricorn, and it is full steam ahead between now and November 19th, when it will then move back into Aquarius, where it's going to stay for the better part of the next 20 years. So pay attention to the astrology for the next 24 hours because the moon is on the move. It is going to come into conjunction with Pluto at 29 degrees, and then we are going to see Pluto go direct tomorrow. So Pluto's waking up, very significant for everybody because we are all impacted by these critical degrees with planets in the late degrees of these signs. You know, we've got Pluto at 29, we've got Neptune at 27, even Saturn's going to kind of creep up there in the late degrees of Pisces next year. So big things are changing, big things are completing. What you need to know is this. Basically, from October 11th, 2024 through November 19th, just a little bit longer than a month, we're going to see Pluto sitting at 29 degrees, and it will be direct, which means it is in full force. You're going to see it pull out all the stops, and there is going to be some profound breakdowns or breakthroughs, depending on how you look at this transit. You want to take a look at where Capricorn is in your chart. That is going to be the area where there is going to be a lot of action. Obviously, with astrology, there's always something else going on in the skies. So if you've been following along recently, we've seen planets go through Libra, come into a square with Pluto. All right, just a few weeks ago, Venus was in a square with Pluto. Now in this next week, not only does Pluto go direct, so it's going to wake up and it's going to be more obvious some of the effects of Pluto and what's been happening behind the scenes while it's been retrograde, but now we're going to see Mercury, and we're also going to see the sun in the next week start coming into a square with Pluto, which always represents as some kind of standoff, some power struggles, some breakdowns, some breakthroughs. Planets in Libra are teaching us that we have to work together. Pluto in Capricorn is kind of showing us where there is something that has power over us, or something that feels challenging, or where we are kind of having to push through fear, issues revolving around control, all that fun Pluto stuff. So lots of stuff kind of happening. And I would just say that obviously this impacts everybody, but especially Scorpio and Capricorn risings. Scorpio risings, pay attention. Your planetary ruler, Pluto, is waking up. So it's going to be a moment of some kind of shift for you. And also my late degrees of Capricorn, sun, moon, rising, you guys are also seeing some pretty profound changes and shifts within yourself. And the cardinal signs too. The cardinal signs are feeling this. So if you're like 28, 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, you're feeling the Pluto square. And you're in the tail end of some Pluto conjunctions or squares. And then that's being passed off to Aquarius and the other fixed signs. Now, Pluto at 29 degrees is at a critical degree. This is an anaretic degree. So I kind of see this as taking all of the lessons and all of the themes revolving around Capricorn and what we've been dealing with since 2008, while Pluto first made this entrance into the sign, and now it's reaching this completion point. So we want to think about where we've been since then and what Capricorn represents. Obviously, it's responsibility, control, long-term goals, career, But it's also about like what has power over us, right? Pluto is power. Capricorn can be top-down structures. It can be bosses. It can be parents. It can also be about big changes in our career and our reputation. Out in the world, this is going to be about power struggles revolving around leadership, stuff that's going on with like 3-letter agencies, stuff connected to government, stuff connected to big business. So this is going to get really interesting because there's a lot of other planets that are kind of triggering Pluto right when Pluto is waking up, creating some very critical cardinal squares. All right. So what does it mean for all of us just before Pluto leaves Capricorn and goes into Aquarius? First things first is planets at 29 degrees mean that we have to complete some kind of change. And Capricorn's ruled by Saturn. It's a cardinal earth sign. It's slow. It takes forever to kind of build through or break through things or build things up. So it can feel like change is coming in a very difficult, challenging, delayed way. But I don't think it's going to feel like that when Pluto goes into Aquarius next month. And the personal impact that I think this is going to have is just, you know, Pluto and Capricorn bringing to light issues relating to power, control, transformation, and the structures in our life. So this could manifest as a need to completely overhaul personal systems or confront deep-seated fears, transform one's approach to your career, your ambition, or even your own personal authority. Obviously, it means that it's time for deep introspection about what truly matters regarding legacy, responsibilities, as well as our personal powers. Now, I put out a Pluto in Capricorn webinar, you know, about the retrograde going back to 29 degrees. It's really helpful for those of you guys who are kind of like struggling to figure out what you have to complete within this time. Go and check that out. I put on there like a Pluto retrograde kind of checklist, and it's to kind of create goals to help you work through week by week as we're approaching Pluto at this final degree. So you still have time over the next month to work on these things that feel bigger than us, things that feel scary, things that feel like almost are impossible to overcome. This is where we push to basically tear down those old structures and those old things that have been creating blocks or limits for us. Now, collectively, it's a little different because when we think about society, like as a whole, this transit definitely brings or highlights, I guess I should say, like systemic changes and breakdowns in government or economic or corporate structures. So we'll see like a push towards more ethical practices or transparency. Sometimes we see significant reforms of how power is wielded within institutions, and also movement towards more sustainable practices or radical restructuring of societal norms can also be more prominent. The heads of companies stepping down is something that I have noticed, or people in top positions in companies or within leadership. Obviously, Pluto at 29 is highlighting older leaders, right? Capricorn is old age, 29 degrees is associated with Leo. The drama, right? The corruption, the crime, all of the murky, swampy, shadowy things where people who have been in positions of power and control may have abused those powers, and equally that's coming to light with Pluto going direct and now challenging almost like the authority of some of these people who have not been wielding their power wisely. By the same token, this can also be a time where we are waking up to some of these crimes against humanity, some of the abuses of power. And with the ending of some positions, there is almost like this phoenix-like energy where there is this rebirth or this opportunity for new people to step in and to shine a light on some of these issues, allowing us to kind of see the truth and then welcome in new heroes or leaders, or even stepping up in your own life and kind of like overcoming some of this stuff. Now, obviously, there's something very different about a planet being direct versus being retrograde. I talked about this in my last video with Jupiter getting ready to turn retrograde. And so this is kind of the inverse of that, where Pluto has been retrograde for a little while now. And with the retrograde, it basically means that this has been more internal, right? We've been internally kind of like stewing on things, and we've been revisiting past issues and working through them internally. So it hasn't been as obvious, and we haven't seen as much action out in the world. But when a planet goes direct, right, or retrograde, when a planet is stationing to go direct or retrograde, we see effects revolving around that planet come to light. So direct motion means that the planet is waking up and it's pushing these themes which have been internal outward, and it's urging us at 29 degrees to take action and transform something, because this is the final moments to be able to almost confront something that's external out in the world. It can be structures or entities. And it's less about reworking, which is where we've been in recent weeks, and it's more about implementing change. Now, something to think about in the background is that Saturn is the dispositor of Pluto, because Saturn is connected with Capricorn, right? So like the next couple days, as the moon comes into conjunction with Pluto, and we're going through this deep emotional purge, and we're working through fears, and we're working through some kind of emotional breakdown, we will then see the moon eventually in a couple days come into conjunction with Saturn. So this is going to be very, very interesting to really kind of highlight and look at what isn't supporting us and where that's showing us everything we need to know. What is breaking down and showing us that there is lack of leadership or lack of direction or lack of control. And that could be in our own lives. For some of you guys, like Capricorn energy is about parents or bosses or leaders or authority figures out in the world. It can be people like cops and connected to like military and stuff in regards to that. So it can have connections to that. But there's just so much going on in the skies right now. Like today, we're coming out of the moon having come into a square with the north or south node. So that already kind of triggered something. And we're in the first quarter square from the solar eclipse in Libra. So we're being faced with some challenges from that solar eclipse we had on the second, where we were setting intentions about what we do want in relationship and who we need to partner with in order to feel stronger or more empowered. So relationships are getting tested right now, basically. And that could be relationships professionally, Capricorn. That could be relationships with leaderships and bosses and parents. That could also be our own relationship issues that are kind of coming into the forefront, as planets are also, going to, come into a square with the moon. So like Sun and the moon square is the first quarter square. The Mercury and the moon square is also going to be talking about where there's some difficulty moving through communication and relationships and like trying to keep the peace, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Let me show you what's going to be happening when this goes direct. So you guys are watching this on the 10th. But it looks to me like the moon is going to come into a square midday today with the sun. Okay, so we start to see like the challenges with diplomacy and leadership. And then we're going to see the moon come into a square with Mercury. That's going to be overnight, kind of very early morning on the 11th tomorrow. And then tomorrow in the morning, you're going to see the moon conjunct Pluto. So where I am is Central Time, so it's going to be like around 10 a.m. So the West Coast is going to be around 8 a.m. The East Coast is going to be around 11 a.m. And this is the moment where we start feeling this breakdown. Now, this is one of the last conjunctions that the moon will make with Pluto before Pluto changes signs. So Pluto will go direct right after this conjunction tomorrow. It'll make one more moon Pluto conjunction, which will be in a month from now. But watch what happens tomorrow when the moon conjuncts Pluto and it squares off with Mercury. It's almost like there could be some kind of crisis or breakdown, and it's like hard to find diplomacy or to communicate with other people, or we feel like in the heat of the moment or where there's some kind of crisis that it's difficult to relate to others. That moon's also been in opposition to the sun, which is coming into a square with Mars as well. But if you guys have seen my astro weather this week, I really kind of break all of that down, and I explain how all week there's some intensity, and it's almost like some of us feel like we're dealing with villains in our lives, like literally, like there is some kind of like really heavy, almost like dark or evil type of vibes that we're trying to kind of push out of our lives with this Pluto stuff. Anyway, so tomorrow moon will conjunct Pluto at 29. Then it's going to pass Pluto. It's going to go into Aquarius. And then we are going to see somewhere in the PM hours that Pluto goes direct. So like today, tomorrow, as Pluto is stationing, we're looking at Saturn. Nothing's really happening with Saturn. Saturn is still retrograde. So there is lack of support, or there's lack of direction, or maybe we're even feeling like we're being sabotaged, or we're self-sabotaging in some way, because that could be Pisces. And we're also looking at Mars, because Mars is also, kind of connected to like Pluto. It's kind of connected to Scorpio energy. And Mars is getting ready to make that opposition later in the month. So what do I think? I think that Pluto at 29 degrees, you know, is basically critical, and it's a wake-up call. And now that Pluto is direct, it's saying like, hey, this thing is coming up, we need to deal with this, like we need to push through this. It demands transformation. That is a non-negotiable. So the area where Pluto is in your chart is basically saying that this thing must change, it must end, it must die off. There must be one big major transformation before Pluto is getting ready to go into Aquarius, which is still a Saturn-based sign. But when we think about the association with Aquarius and the modern day ruler of Uranus, this is freedom, this is change, this is kind of upending things, this is new opportunities, this is breaking away from the old ways, making room for the new. It can feel chaotic. It can also be about major like revolution, especially for the future and like the masses of people and how they're like reacting and responding to things. So I think that with the moon leaving the conjunction of Pluto tomorrow, and then it's going to go into Aquarius, and then, you know, Pluto goes direct. It's like, I'm looking at what's happening on the 11th, where collectively people are waking up and they're going like, oh, this is what's been happening out in the world. This is like, you know, like the wool has been pulled over our eyes. And like, now we're kind of seeing, you know, the truth for what it really is. And like, there is some kind of breakthrough. I also feel like this is about confronting things and confronting what we've been afraid of dealing with, confronting what we feel like has had power over us. It may be like that last call for any unfinished business in the Capricorn area of your life. And it can also mean that there is like a culmination of events or decisions that are playing out basically over this next month that have been brewing for years, okay? So think about what has happened since 2008 when Pluto went into the sign of Capricorn. Now, the Sabian symbol, which I'm going to read to you guys, and I know I've read this one a lot, so some of you guys already know it, but for those of you guys who are new, I like to work with the Sabian symbols. It gives me a little bit more depth and a little bit more food for thought, and it's like a psychic vision that is paired up with the particular degree. So we're looking at 29 degrees and change. So I'm going to read 30 degrees of Capricorn, which is the last degree of Capricorn. Capricorn 30, a secret business conference. The keyword is opportunity. The theme is executive session. The symbol speaks to politics and the determination of individuals to control the course of events and resolve important issues through political alliances. The image of secret business conference is behind the scenes meeting, alluding to power plays and attempt to determine an outcome of a situation by quietly and cleverly manipulating the personal resources at hand. The emphasis here is on psychological insight, keen understanding of human behavior, and tactical maneuvering. At its highest, it represents strategic planning and extraordinary administrative skills. Watch for abuses of power, hidden agendas, or taking unfair advantage of others. The accent is on things going on behind the scenes. Secret private alliances may be involved. Your greatest advantage lies in keeping your plan to yourself until you're ready to put it into action. Line things up before you begin. Guard against placing your personal desires above the best interests of the group. Don't try to manipulate others to achieve your own ends. Stepping stones: meeting, conference, consultation, association, alliances, conversation, parlay, deliberation, Congress, assembly, discussions, forum, administration, politics, strategizing, planning, maneuvering, hidden agendas, power plays, and background. Well, it just so happens Congress is not in session right now while all of this stuff's going on, with all these storms going on, with a lot of people being in need and definitely the country being in need of support. It's going to be interesting to see like Mercury and the Sun go through Libra, which, as you guys have heard me say in the past, these planets in Libra are in superior position. They are attacking Pluto, or I like to affectionately say they're giving the finger to the establishment. Some of you guys like that, but that's what's happening. Oppositions and squares to Pluto is like a big FU. And Libra, Sun, and Mercury is saying we have to stick together. We have to work together. We have to collaborate. We have to connect. We have to support. We have to put our differences aside. And the oppositions from Mars is where some of the action, the conflict, the destruction, the problems are coming from homeland, Cancer, homeland security, literal home security, chaos, devastation, revolving around homes, revolving around property, emotions, family, and like people mobilizing, right, and doing things. Mars is about military or militias as well, by the way. So you're going to see like some people who would never support certain causes, some people who would never work together through the pressure of crisis or situations that are unfolding this week. It's pushing people to like be diplomatic and like step up and work together to be able to overcome these challenges. So whether that's like a family member you don't get along with, that you have to put your differences aside to kind of squash a problem, maybe it could mean that you're getting more involved in your local community or with your roommates, or even with, you know, with your neighbors. There is definitely lots of emphasis on 2 is better than 1, right? All month long. You guys are going to see this as we go through the month of October. Obviously, there's also, like with the South Node in Libra, like a difficult time finding diplomacy, and the squares to Pluto can represent where there is some like powerful situation or some situation where other people are making decisions and telling people who they can or cannot work with, who they should or should not support. There can be definitely lots of ultimatums being given, I think, with like the Sun and Mercury square Pluto, where people are like, oh, well, I can't be in a relationship with you if you support this cause, or, you know, if you're supporting this company or this agenda, you know, you can't work for us, or, you know, businesses that are coming down on people for being really vocal about some of their religious, their political beliefs, right? Some of their beliefs revolving around values and right from wrong, and also like legal stuff. So that you're going to see a lot of that's going to be coming up. I think the lesson here for squares is always integration. And it doesn't matter if it's like an opposition or a square. It means that we have to kind of find the middle ground. So when I think about the Sabian symbol, it's kind of like, yes, you have people coming together in back rooms. And on one hand, to me, that sounds kind of like murky. And there can be people who are like, if you vote for this, then we'll give you money for that. Yeah, it could be that, right? But it could also symbolize the integration of personal desires with also societal or universal needs, suggesting a point where one's personal journey contributes or reflects to kind of like the broader societal or spiritual trends, where people can put their differences aside and say, you know what, we have to work together to overcome this problem. You know, it's going to impact everybody. Like, let's support one another. I also think that, you know, when I think about like these people meeting behind closed doors, I think about this being like a figure of authority, and it can be an elder, or it can be a sage, or people who have kind of always been in charge, or like the CEO of a company that's always been there, or somebody who's always ran something. And they're kind of like standing at a threshold and looking back at their previous achievements, and they're kind of reflecting on where they've been, and like they have issues being able to kind of give up their power because they feel like they are what they do. So a lot of people are afraid to retire, or they're afraid to make major changes at their job, or even like with their status. And for a lot of us, I think the 29 degrees is about finding ourselves at a juncture where past efforts, right, in the Capricorn area of our life, but just generally Capricorn is like career and our status, but past efforts in career or personal development or societal standing are being recognized. And now there's like also an awareness of, okay, this is what we've done, this is what we've always done, but we're stepping into a new phase because Pluto's about to go into 0 degrees of Aquarius. So it's going into a completely different area of our chart. It still represents Pluto things, endings, beginnings, regeneration, you know, change, but it's going to come out in a different way. It's going to be expressed in a different way, right? The sign is like the lens which the planet kind of behaves. So I think about how, you know, this new phase is coming in where, you know, individual achievements might literally be that, you know, we're not really focusing on this big career goal or anything anymore, or being in charge. You know, now there is much more of like an innovative or community oriented kind of purpose. There's a new goal. There's a new thing that we're kind of moving towards collectively. And rather than being like, I'm the boss, I'm the star, I'm the one that's in charge, we're moving into an area where Aquarius is going to be like panels, right? It's going to be like, you know, you guys watch like, for example, like you watch like The Voice, or you watch American Idol, you know, you have all these celebrities, but they're a part of a panel that's making decisions about who moves forward. The power of the collective, that's very much Pluto and Aquarius. So rather than being like, oh, we have one big branch of government that oversees everything, we're going to see that distribution of power change. And there may be new branches of government, or there's going to be whole new cabinets coming in, or, you know, the Senate may be all new, the Congress might be all new. There's maybe going to be the birth of new political parties even, that's going to totally radically change the way that we look at distribution of power. That's one example. But I think that for many of us, it is saying like, before we move on, you know, there's going to be some stragglers. There are going to be some people who are like, I like the way things have been. I like having the power, the control. I'm not willing to give that up. And you're going to see a lot of dirty tricks and things that are going to come up with Pluto at 29 degrees before we make that inevitable kind of ingress into Aquarius. I recommend, you know, embracing change. There ain't no stopping this train. There is definitely going to be some stuff with Mars opposed Pluto, and there is definitely going to be some stuff with planet square Pluto where, yes, we're going to see a whole lot of resistance. But what Pluto teaches us is that, like, we don't really have a say. Inevitably, at some point, we're going to be 6 feet in the ground. That's just the reality of the situation. And the way that I try to look at it is like with Pluto and Capricorn, I'm like, do I want to be remembered for what I did, you know, like professionally, or are there so many other things that I want to be like known for? And that's how I just try to think about it, like generally. I also feel like this is about recognizing that we can't take all that stuff with us, right? When we're dead, the house, the money, the cars, the status, right? All of that stuff, like we don't get to take that with us to the next world. We're not going to carry all that crap across the river Styx and then show up to the next realm with it. It's not going to do us any good. So it's about not being too attached to things, to status, to control, to our career, embracing some of these changes that might actually be coming. It definitely is a transit that favors those who are able to adapt and willing to transform. We want to avoid clinging to outdated structures or ideas revolving around control, right? Our careers, our reputation, our status, who we've given our power to, you know, what we kind of feel has power over us. And I also think this is about reflecting and acting. So we've used the retrograde as kind of the reflective period. And Pluto in itself, it does represent Scorpio, which is a water sign. And I think that Pluto's journey is about to understand deeper truths, but also to act decisively when necessary, to know when to say, this is the end, you know, of the relationship, the job, the party, like whatever, like knowing when it's time to kind of like bury something and like move on. So for many of us, I think the next month is going to be this turning point where we're like, okay, this is the beginning of the end. And rather than clinging to that and like kicking and screaming and like not going along with it willingly, if we're embracing the ending, it's going to make the new beginning so much easier to receive. And that new beginning is actually going to be coming for you primarily in the area of Aquarius. So whatever's getting wrapped up in Capricorn has to change before Pluto goes into Aquarius in the following sign and house. And that's going to be the next fire that you're kind of putting out, right? But that's also like that new beginning that's kind of coming because you've worked through all of the karmic stuff and the muck in Capricorn. We are also going to be thinking a lot about ethics. I think Pluto at 29 degrees, there is this focus on integrity in all dealings. And this transit definitely highlights where we might be out of alignment with our true inner values. And that can also mean that, you know, we've been too obsessed or stuck or fixated or, you know, limited in one particular area. And so maybe like Pluto's, you know, ingress into Aquarius over the next month alleviates a lot of that. I think it will. I was really unsure to see how Pluto in Aquarius would manifest. And to be honest with you, like Aquarius is chaotic, right? It is unconventional. It is very rebellious and it zigs and it zags and it definitely feels a lot more abstract. But I think it's going to be a lot easier for us to navigate than Pluto in Capricorn because the change just comes so slow and it's so painful. Versus, you know, over the next couple of years, Pluto in Aquarius, we're going to see Pluto sextile Saturn and Neptune the next 2 years in Aries. So we're going to feel incentivized. There's going to be new things. We're all starting over in some new way. Society's going to have a bunch of new opportunities. And we're also going to see in 2025 that Uranus will be trining Pluto as well. That'll go also into 2026 where, you know, profound change happens as a result of Uranus and Gemini things. Moving, learning, technology, languages, cars, like all that kind of stuff is going to change. So we have a lot of support from outer planets in the midst of what will be this particular planetary ingress. But reflect on maybe not necessarily where you've been, but where you're going, because Aquarius is the future. You know, if things have been difficult and slow and you've seen a lot of breakdown, it doesn't necessarily have to be like that moving forward for the next 20 years. And Pluto is boogeyman, right? It is the monster under the bed. It is the, you know, monster in our closet or the skeleton in our closet. Pluto always represents what's like scary or gory or what is a little too taboo or just like the parts of ourselves that we don't want exposed. And a lot of that is connected to vulnerability, transparency, right? And also like feeling like we have to kind of give something up. Pluto is also about wealth. So we have to confront the shadow. And right now, I think, is the time to really just head on, face what we have been avoiding, what we don't want to deal with, what we don't want to look at. And best believe with some of the squares and the oppositions, you're going to get that full force. It is going to definitely bring that up through the Libra and the Cancer areas of your chart as well with the T-squares. But I think that personal growth through confronting some of these fears right now or past traumas will be significant. Like you will be rewarded if you're willing to like be brave and say like, this doesn't have, this doesn't have control over me anymore, or maybe I'm shining a light on it and I realized that it wasn't a monster. It was just a shadow that was being made from something and I made it out to be something that it was much bigger than it really was. And now you can kind of release it and let it go. In terms of like my predictions for what I see coming, I mean, come on, I've been telling you guys this a lot, but definitely a lot of like systemic reforms. And I think that even though this is the final hour this next month with Pluto at 29 of Capricorn, expect significant changes in governance and financial systems or corporate ethics. Movements towards decentralization, radical shifts in power and how it's managed is definitely going to be much more pronounced. On Inauguration Day 2025, we are going to see the Sun conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, so here in the United States, that means that there is 100% going to be a brand new transfer of power. And whatever or whoever is coming into power on that day, regardless of who it is, it's ushering in this massive change for the collective and how we collectively look at leadership as well as the future, right? You guys, if you want to see that chart, I might do it in the future, but I definitely talk about it in my election video. And it's really interesting because we have Inauguration Day at the same place, the same time every year in January when we have an election year. So, the ascendant is Taurus. So Uranus is going to be like conjunct the ascendant and the Sun is in Aquarius on the midheaven and it's conjunct Pluto. So that tells me that whoever's coming into power is going to have a radical effect on money, resources, food, supplies, goods, the banking system. And Pluto can be good or bad. And I think it's all relative, but it's going to be a radical change to some of these things, regardless of who it is. I do think that this is also going to be about personal breakthroughs. So many people, I think, might have in the next month a profound personal transformation. And it may feel like it's in the final hour, but better late than never, right? It's like you don't want to let this month pass you by because you might look back years from now and go, I should have made the change there, or I should have left then, or I should have said something then. We want to do it now. And I think that these changes or these transformations are leading to, for a lot of people, career changes, right? New life paths or new deep psychological opportunities for healing. Especially with Saturn being the dispositor of Pluto, it's emotional healing, it's spiritual healing. It's also going to be shifts revolving around, changes in what we believe in, because Pisces can deal with beliefs. It's ruled by Jupiter, and all of the things we did not know, right? So a lot of it can also be about exposure of things we did not know, information, news, video, photographs, things coming out about Pisces related things. This could be immigration. This could be borders. This could be about storms and weather. This could also be about prisons. It could be about hospitals. And those who are connected to leadership or who are in control or the heads of some of these particular kind of entities and the abuses of power and how it's interconnected, where Capricorn is influencing Pisces. So this is where government is influencing hospitals. This is where government is influencing stuff revolving around borders and immigration. Quite literally, not politicking. This is the astrology. And equally, Saturn in Pisces is influencing, right, Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn. So it's where also there has been backroom deals, Sabian symbol. There's been agreements, right, Sabian symbol, and things that have been hidden from the public, Pisces 12th house, stuff that's secretive contracts. Jupiter is the dispositor of Saturn, and these two have been in and out of squares. We're going to see more. Hate to break it to you guys, but it's less about what's going on in your country. It's more about your leadership in your country and where they have actually been failing you as leaders and how they have been selling themselves out to a globalist agenda, making agreements and contracts behind closed doors, especially when it comes to food, medicine, distribution of goods, things revolving around communications, freedom of speech, and where there are certain people in positions of power who are tightly tied to some globalist agenda. Or there is definitely an incentive to influence each other and kind of get on the same page, even though they live in completely different countries and they have different laws and regulations and, you know, different constitutions or whatever, you know. And I think a lot of it's going to be about international law and treaties, because Jupiter in Gemini is about contracts. So I'm listening for some of this stuff, you know, like, unfortunately, obviously, you know, it's going to vary country to country, and can get very convoluted when you hear things like, well, there's treaties between nations, right? But like, you know, treaties, does that supersede our constitutional rights? Does that supersede, you know, your country's constitution or, you know, your civil rights? That's what's going to be up for debate. And Pisces is going to be about global matters. So when I think of Pisces, it's like ports, it's going to be hospitals, medications, it's going to be about religion, actually. There's going to be a lot of stuff about religion. And where there is some government incentive or kind of, I guess I should say, like organized incentive to have an influence on religion, I think that's going to be part of it as well, right? And also immigration, very Saturn in Pisces. So yeah, there's going to be systemic change, but the question is it going to be good or bad? And, you know, these global movements might push for, you know, focusing on environmental policies. I think that this is really going to be connected with water, because of Saturn in Pisces, and like water rights and transportation and things like that. I think it's also going to be about economic equality, you know, digital freedoms, because Pluto is moving into Aquarius. So it's going to be about where there's major change and transformation when it comes to digital stuff, technology, the internet, right? And where the internet is changing and how that is impacting everybody. We have some places in the world that are literally being told they have to have a digital ID before they can get on the internet and use the internet, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because that ID is going to then be tied to your finances, your credit score. It's going to be tied also to your medical stuff. I mean, when you're living in a society where you have to have this information to get on the internet, and people are afraid to access certain information, or they can't access it, or they're afraid to say certain things online, or that they're going to get kind of docked financially and kind of be pulled out of society because they're not agreeing with, you know, what their local or, you know, their country's government is doing. It's a little sticky there. So I definitely feel like a lot of this stuff is going to start coming up now in a very big way. And the beauty is that with Pluto at 29 degrees, if people create enough of a ruckus about what's going on, it can have some huge impact on then what happens when Pluto goes into Aquarius. Like, just me as an American, the last time we had Pluto in these degrees, this is when we had the United States Revolution. This is when the United States basically sought independence from Britain. And a lot of it was over, you know, Pluto in the second house, taxation without representation. And it was also things revolving around independence and like moving away from the crown and being able to like have the goods that they were like developing and like creating, basically, rather than feeling like they were slaves to the king. Anyway, so essentially here we are again. Obviously, there's different planets and different signs, but I think now it's taken much more of a modern twist, where it's like, well, now it's about how I think Americans are feeling about taxes and like where our tax money is going and how it's being spent. And like we're seeing some of these politicians living in ivory houses when we're watching parts of the infrastructure of America completely collapse and like crumble. So I think about what happened back then, and I think that Pluto going into Aquarius and Saturn and Neptune going into Aries is very much going to be like that rise of the kind of patriotic spirit in America. And like, yeah, it's difficult and it's independent. A lot of people are probably going to have to find like parallel economies, and they're going to have to become more self-sufficient. But I think some really good things can come from that. So I wouldn't worry about it. I would just take note of what's happening around you over the next month and kind of seeing like where some of this breakdown is coming up. And like, trust me, you're definitely going to see it. So The transit, essentially being at a critical degree, it's a catalyst for change, and it's urging both individuals as well as society to evolve and face the consequences of, being stagnant. If you happen to have a Capricorn rising, right, or you have a Capricorn placement around 28, 29 degrees, you're feeling the crunch because Pluto is waking up within those degrees. So it's basically saying, cool, you've been thinking about change, now you're going to do the change. Now you're going to be the change, and it's scary and it's painful and you might have to give something up, but you have so much more to gain, right? And then also Scorpio risings, okay? So Scorpio risings, your planetary ruler is on the move. You're going to be feeling it, especially because Pluto is your chart ruler, so it has something to do with you. And I'll take you guys through the 12 signs and show you where this is happening. Certainly like 27 to 29 degrees of the cardinal signs, so Aries, Cancer, and Libra. You guys are feeling this too. You're almost done with some of the squares that's involving Pluto. And then this is going to get passed off of to the early degrees of the fixed signs. So even if you are like a 0 to 1 degree, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you're still feeling it. It's just now it's going to be working its way towards you, because Pluto is going to go, I think in 2025, from like around 0 to 3 degrees. So it'll stay within those degrees pretty much all year next year. I want you guys to think about what's been happening since 2008. Okay, so go back in time, think about what happened. 2008, Pluto went into Aquarius. We all know kind of what happened in the world. If you don't, go watch my Pluto retrograde video in Capricorn. I take you through the whole timeline, and I talk about what big events have happened. Like the 2008 collapse, all the stuff that happened with the housing market, everything that was going on also with major change and transfer of power. We look at what happened basically with like Obama coming into office. We talk about how there was like all these shifts revolving around global power and like everything leading up basically to the pandemic. And we also talk about like, the Occupy Wall Street. We talk about the Black Lives Matter protests. We talk about all of these things that really were, kind of, I think, seeded in 2008. And then through some of the Uranus squares and other things that were happening, it was like a buildup of energy. But you'll see a thread that you'll follow if you go and look at the Capricorn area of your chart, where it's just been one long lesson in this is difficult, painful, it's taking forever, this has too much power over me. Maybe you really learned that lesson in like 2020, and like now we're kind of completing it. I also want to remind you guys that, like I said, the astrology this week ain't playing around. So not only do we want to pay attention to the 10th and the 11th, because Moon conjuncts Pluto, Pluto wakes up, and we'll see the Pluto themes out in the world, by the way. But we're going to see Mercury square, so that's going to be intense communication. And then we're going to see the Sun square Pluto, and that's going to be right around the 20th, the 21st of October. Okay, so that's like boss battle, killing something off, there can only be one. And this is where like partnerships and diplomacy are overcoming some like really heavy, long-standing issues. And then you're going to see Mars start to oppose Pluto. And I've rapped about that, so I'll spare you guys. But essentially, Mars in Cancer is about home, family, domestic things, emotional things that where we become too emotionally reactionary or defensive or whatever. And when Mars gets to about 28, 29 degrees, this particular degree is associated with drowning. I've seen this a lot with people who drowned, unfortunately. And I'm not saying everybody's going to drown, so don't freak out. Maybe if you have Cancer placements at, the late degrees of Cancer, or, you've got an angle there or something. Sure, if you're in water, be more careful, right? But I think this is much more about emotionally, we feel like we're drowning. And we're going to want to watch the moon, right? So when Mars starts opposing Pluto, we're actually going to have the moon in Libra. So it's going to create this T-square. I think about, we have a lot of flooding that's been going on around the world, everywhere, right? So maybe for some people, it's like knowing if you're in those areas, do you know how to swim? Do you have a life vest? Do you have a plan? Do you have a support system? Sure. But emotionally feeling overwhelmed and like you're drowning in some of the things that are going on, that I think is more the theme. And Mars wants to fight. It wants to protect. It wants to defend itself. And like I said, Cancer is the home and family. So this is the individual, because Mars is connected to the North Node, fighting to protect their home, their space, right? Their individuality even, like their personal identity. And, Mars can be more about, like I said, the individual or the family. And Pluto in Capricorn is going to be about like those in positions of power. So just thinking about this, putting all of this together, a lot of it is going to be about whether or not people feel like they feel safe at home, or if there is conflict between, you know, home and work responsibility, or parenting, or dealing with parents, and how you have to rearrange or shift or make changes or rush to go and be with a family member or a parent. Now, it's going to be in a different part of everybody's chart, but to me, that seems significant. We will only see Mars oppose Pluto in these degrees one time, okay? Because the other two oppositions, which you're going to see later in like December of 2024, by then Pluto will be in Aquarius, so it's a completely different energy. And then also in like the early spring of 2025, we'll see Pluto oppose Mars again, once again in Aquarius and in Leo. I'll show you. But cardinal signs are about initiating something. So I'm looking at the astrology like October 30th and 31st with the moon triggering that. And then it looks like Mars will officially oppose Pluto around the 2nd. So it's going to be like the 30th of October through like, let's say the 3rd of November, just leading up to the United States Revolution. And you'll hear a lot of astrologers say, well, Mars opposed Pluto is kind of bloody. It's kind of brutal. You know, yes, we can see that, of course. But it doesn't have to be. We can choose not to do that. We can say that's not how we're going to respond to things. And when people get emotionally defensive with Mars in Cancer, they hit back, and yes, it can become deadly. But Mars is also trining Neptune at the same time, which means peaceful protests, you know, trying to find ways to release and let things go, using spirituality, prayer. You know, I saw something the other day that was really interesting. It was like 200 people were found in a church in one of the areas, I think it was one of the Carolinas, that were in a remote area, and they were all alive, but they were all stranded in a remote area, and the whole community and like the congregation, everybody came together, and there was 200 people in a church, and they lived through the floods and the storm. That's very like Mars trine Saturn, which we've had recently, right? Where we have safety and security through connection with faith in God. Protection from water, right? Because of prayer. Mars is going to try Neptune, where people are like, rather than working against the water, we're going to work with it. We're going to find ways to use it to our benefit, or we're going to find ways to overcome it. And it can also be about spiritual war, right? Pisces is spirituality, Mars is war. So there is something kind of going on in the ethers that's definitely impacting all of us, you know, here. And we have a decision to make if we are going to fight back, or if we are going to recognize that really this is something that's being stirred up, that's trying to get everybody to fight, so that way there is chaos, there's confusion, there's all of this stuff. Hopefully we're able to work together. I think that's really the lesson here. But yes, the heat gets turned up quite a bit from the end of October into the beginning of November. And then what you'll see is on the 19th, then Pluto goes into Aquarius. So I definitely feel like you're going to see the shift in November, you know, you're going to see the shift. I keep saying I have a theory. We may not actually know who the president is until Pluto goes into Aquarius. I think that's very possible, because right when that happens, Mercury is in shadow, and this is right on the United States ascendant, and Mercury is getting ready to go retrograde. So it's going to be like, wait, we thought it was going to be this, and it's going to be that. And like, yes, there'll be some chaos, but I think this is going to be a big period, 18th, 19th, 20th of November, where we're like starting to kind of see which way this is going to go. Maybe. I know some people are like, it's crazy that it could last that long, but it could. And Pluto's in Aquarius, but Mars is still kind of in opposition here. Okay. So you'll see then Mars will go retrograde the beginning of December. And then it's going to come back into an opposition with Pluto. However, different vibe. Like when Mars is in opposition between Pluto in Cancer and Capricorn, it's much more about like home versus state, or like, you know, family versus responsibility. And it's going to be a lot of like whether or not, you know, there are people who are showing up and helping us when it comes to our home matters. Very different vibe with Mars in Leo, because this is about leaders. This is about individuals, right? Like Mars in Leo is going to be about leaders of military. It's going to also be about individual people. And I don't like saying this, but dude, like all eyes are going to be on Zelensky. If you guys have seen Zelensky's chart, holy cow, because he's going to have, I think, I think it's Pluto, I want to say conjunct his sun in opposition to Mars. Hold on, let me see if I have it. Ugh, I hope I don't get docked for talking about this, but I'll talk about it. It's all right. Let me see. Am I spelling this right? Let's see. See if I have him. Yeah, I have him. All right, so I'm just going off of memory here, but yeah. So look at what's going to happen with his chart. Look at what's going to happen with his chart. I think a lot of this is going to be about him. All right, so first of all, as soon as Pluto goes into Aquarius, I know I'm all over the place, sorry guys. As soon as Pluto goes into Aquarius, it's going to start opposing his Mars. So this is going to be in November. All right, so here. So he's a Gemini rising. Jupiter's on his ascendant, so he's getting more recognition. He's going to have Pluto at 0 degrees in his 9th house, and it's going to oppose Mars in his 3rd house. So the end of November, I'm watching what's happening here. Even his Mars return, look at this. His Mars return is in opposition to Pluto, right? And then you're going to see a couple days later, the moon will conjunct Pluto. Mars opposes his sun and his Venus. And then Pluto is going to oppose his Mars. And then Mars is going to retrograde basically in December. Sometime between mid-November and I would say January, there's something going on here. What? I don't know. But, you know, Mars in his chart rules enemies, right? 6th house and also health. And it's intercepted in the 11th, which is like friends and allies and other people. And then Pluto for him also deals with his health and his habits and enemies. And it's going to be starting to come into conjunction with his sun, which is going to be about the 3rd house of communications. The Mars-Pluto stuff, both the Pluto ingress and the Mars opposition, I think is going to be about whether or not he's backtracking on things that he has said or pulling out of the war, right? Mars can be war. And how that plays out for him. Certainly he's got the placements of somebody who's going to be, I think, under some stress is going to be an understatement. I wasn't planning on doing this, but like whatever, who cares? Let's look at his Mars return. Okay, which is on November 4th, 2024. So notice Leo rising. Mars is in the 12th house, hidden enemies within the home, and it opposes Pluto and Capricorn. Same aspects that RFK Jr. is having as a Leo rising. He's got planets in Capricorn in the 6th, and he's going to have Mars coming into his ascendant and opposing Pluto. But I definitely feel like this is going to be potentially for him being in a situation where, you know, he's feeling like he's under attack in some way. And that could be quite literally within the home or the pressure of what's kind of going on in the home base. And Mars in the 12th house could indicate something is coming to a completion. Something is setting. So it can be war, but it can also be a position of power, right? And this is going to be going on for, 2 years. The Mars return is 2 years. So it doesn't have to happen that day. We could see more happening around, the eclipses and the retrogrades, certainly in the spring. But Moon Venus in the 5th house, and that being connected to the ascendant of the United States really makes me wonder if there is going to be some change in direction revolving around kind of what's going on with some of that stuff. Just kind of spitballing, just mostly looking at the Mars-Pluto opposition. But that's very, very prominent. That's very prominent in his chart. Very prominent in his chart. So I'm curious to see how that materializes. And then obviously, Pluto's coming in conjunction with his sun for the next couple of years, and most likely will materialize, I think, with him quite literally having to go to another country. That's kind of the feeling that I'm getting, or moving to another place or being in another place because of that connection to his 4th house. So then if you look at RFK, see. He's going to have some similar aspects. So look at this. He's going to have Pluto is actually at 29 on his Mercury, which has been the breakdown, the destruction, which Pluto can be at that degree of his affiliation with a party, which happened. He left the Democratic Party. And he didn't see it coming, and he realized that it's been essentially like an orchestrated takedown, of his political career, which I think is fair to say. And Pluto is now coming up on his descendant, which is going to be about his public image and reputation and the connection. Maybe if you look at like whole sign, would be like his family or his past coming up, or his private life coming up, which is impacting how people perceive him, and also his relationships. Certainly there's been a scandal that happened recently revolving around a relationship that he had with a journalist that was purely text related, but still kind of came out in the air, which I don't know if a lot of people heard about it or not, but I think that's part of the Pluto transit. But Mars is going to sit on his ascendant, right? And it's going to oppose Pluto. So I remember looking at this, like, when I did the election video months ago, I was like, something about the RFK thing makes me feel like he's definitely in a position of being somebody who's definitely in the hot seat. Like when you see Mars, Pluto on personal planets in opposition or on angles, it's big, and he's going to feel with Mars on his ascendant like he has to fight, or he has to defend, or he has to step into a position of leadership, or he has to push back against something. And it's opposing Pluto in the 7th house. So the 7th house could be his partner, it could be his political allies, it could be his friends, it could be how other people perceive him, the media, right? And so he's going to be under personal attacks, basically. And anybody who looks at Trump's chart, being a Leo rising, if you look at that from whole sign, he's going to have the same Mars on the ascendant opposed Pluto on the 7th house cusp. So he's also in the hot seat, although I think RFK Jr. and Zelensky are definitely, per the Pisces chart, I think more so in it. And having Mars retrograde over your ascendant can be really about the body, and the body experiencing a breakdown, a change in direction, hiding away, right? Especially like Leo rising, like Mars going retrograde for a Leo rising chart for both RFK as well as Trump could be about taking a step back and not being in the public eye, not being in the spotlight, being behind the scenes, the work that they're doing behind the scenes, right? JD Vance, Leo rising, he's gonna have the same thing. So I'm curious to see what happens with some of these transits, right? And obviously, like Pluto, just to be fair, Pluto is doing some stuff in Kamala Harris's chart too. They're all kind of getting it. Everybody's getting their dose of it. Her being a sun in Libra and a moon in Aries, she's had Pluto going through her 8th house, squaring basically her luminaries, which is pretty significant. This is kind of the midpoint. This is like the sun moon midpoint that it's been on the last 2 years or so, squaring her moon. So it brings up lots of emotional tension with home, family, and also, female relationships or her affiliation with parties, the 11th house, and financial dealings. And it's also been squaring her sun, which could be about her communication, revolving around her career, how she's dealing with like men. And, the Pluto square could quite literally have been like there was a leader who went through some kind of dramatic change, or, there was a crisis, or there was corruption or whatever. And it pushed her into the spotlight. And having Saturn on her Chiron in the 10th house, like she hasn't been comfortable being there. Like that's gotta be difficult being put in that position. And like Chiron, when it's retrograde in the 10th house, it doesn't know how to assert itself, especially in Pisces. So with Saturn showing up, I think that, the eclipse is there, everything's putting her in the spotlight, the North Node's going through there, like she's going through all that stuff. And that was a part of the process. But, the Pluto square is still lingering. And simultaneously, the Pluto-Mars stuff that's going to be starting up for her is bringing up her 11th house lord of friends, associations, groups, and allies. And it's also bringing up her 6th house lord, which can be about her health. It can be about her staff. It could be about her scheduling. And it's going to oppose Pluto. And then it's going to retrograde. I think that speaks more about her confidence. And I think that speaks more about her financial situation more than anything. And whether or not she's still getting the same support from allies or the same financial support from some big donors or from people who have been involved in PACs or what have you. That retrograde could quite literally bring a change in how she's getting paid or how she feels about herself. That's possible. A lot of people have asked me, who do you think it's going to be? And I was in this when it was still before the debate, when it was like Biden and then it was Trump. And I was like, neither one of these people are supposed to be president. And I got a lot of slack for it. But now you guys understand what I'm talking about when I said that it wasn't looking good for either one. And then Biden steps down and then like Trump almost gets shot. I mean, it's just like crazy. So I have said all along that Trump was supposed to go up against a woman. So it's interesting that it's Kamala. It's too late in the game to make changes, although I think you guys are going to see some pretty crazy stuff come out in October about, all of the people who are running for the position of president of the United States. I think that's the October surprise that is coming. But quite honestly, it does not look positive for either Kamala or Trump. It just doesn't, right? A lot of people are going to say, well, Jupiter's on her north node and it's on her ascendant. Yeah, but it's squaring Saturn, guys. Okay, it's squaring Saturn. And equally, even though Jupiter is her 10th house lord, because it's going to remain in her 12th house and it's going to stay in a square with Saturn, it's not boding well for her moving into a position of power. Not politicking, just being honest with you guys. You add that to the fact that you're going to see a Mercury retrograde that's going to be happening right around post-election that will be about her opponents, right? 7th house, which will retrograde and oppose Jupiter and square Saturn, which tells me that most likely the results are going to be left up to somebody else deciding, or it's going to have to be decided upon. And it may not look good for her. And I don't necessarily think it looks good for Trump either way. I've said all along that if Trump's alive, I think he will win. And that's not my political beliefs, because I don't believe in picking sides, but it's more the astrology and having looked at some of the progressions and the fact that, it looks very, very strong for Trump. He has some of the same themes that are going on when he started actually getting ready to run in 2015 and 2016. He comes into a very strong period in spring of 2025. But regardless of who's president and what direction things go in, like, things need to change. And like the Pluto transit is about that. And it's about kind of shining a light less on the political alliances, although there are a lot of them, more on the crime and the corruption revolving around who's pulling the strings, making decisions about who's getting into positions of power. And if you guys don't think that these people aren't chosen, you're crazy. Even if you're a Trump supporter, as much as I hate to say that, like, whoever ends up getting placed in these positions, they get placed there for a reason, and everybody owes somebody a favor. If you look at the astrology of 2025 and you look at the United States chart, you can see that that chart is cooked, right? It is absolutely cooked. It does not matter who is president. It does not matter who is president. The United States is in for a rude awakening the next couple of years, as much as I hate to say that. This is the Sibley chart, the Sagittarius rising, and the ruler obviously is Jupiter, right? So, this year, right when we're coming into the election, Jupiter is conjunct Mars in the 7th house. So it's already kind of begging for a fight or some kind of conflict or some kind of intensity or some kind of attack that's coming from an unexpected, outside source. Hidden enemies is Mars, and it's foreign 21, right? And it's Gemini, so something by air, something revolving technology, something revolving communications, like that is baked into the astrology. You factor that in with a kind of wrapping up the Pluto return, and now Mars is in the 8th house, which deals with losses, and also I think it's going to be about major changes revolving around the markets and debt, and also mortgages and homes. And it's going to start opposing Pluto. This is spelling big financial challenges pretty much now until the spring of 2025 for the United States. Eclipses and retrogrades in the whole sign 4th house. Saturn and Neptune coming into conjunction with the IC, which could quite literally be a civil war. It could also quite literally mean that we're having to rebuild America from the ground up. Rebuild military as well. I think it's also going to be, because it's connected to the whole sign 5th house, about younger leaders, younger people being involved in leadership positions, dealing with issues revolving around borders and security, but also like declining birth rates, because obviously Aries is about life. So that will definitely come up as well. We are approaching in the spring of next year some very big eclipses, along with some retrogrades and some squares. I think that the United States chart does indicate that there is a potential for another assassination attempt on a leader next year. And that's why I say it doesn't matter who wins. We're going to see that there is definitely going to be a lot of frustration. And I think a lot of people who are going to be frustrated and agitated regardless of who wins, and that the United States is ultimately preparing to come into another Jupiter-Mars conjunction, followed by an approaching Uranus return. And right around the time that we're having our Uranus return, we're also going to have Pluto on the South Node. You guys can follow me back to, many years ago when I was working for Astrology. And one of the first videos that I did was I was talking very openly and honestly about the events that were coming leading up to 2020. And I was talking about it, I think, in like 2016, 2017, that the world would be very different and what I saw happening, and that the United States would eventually become, I think, separate territories, kind of like Europe, where they're all together kind of on the same continent. But you do see that there is separate countries, right? I think that's what the United States is going to become. I think you're going to see some states that are going to band together. I think you're going to see some states that are going to want to become more independent. I think we're going to see a radical change revolving around the direction of state and local governments becoming more so empowered to make decisions. And ultimately, the Uranus return, it can indicate, pretty much 2026 on, that there could be some kind of civil war energy that's leading to the United States separating. This is only the beginning. What you're going to see for the next 2 years is going to be this realization that how things have been going is not working. And it's all coming down to this moment with Pluto at 29 degrees, which means that we have to see the ending, the grand reveal, all of the stuff exposed, all of the corruption, especially in the United States chart, revolving around money, right? And I think a lot of that's just like who's getting sold out, who's working with NGOs, like who's working with lobbyists, like we're hearing stuff like, I think it was the governor of New York that had somebody on her team that was like her right-hand woman that come to find out she was like literally like a CCP, like informant, like she was a spy working in the top level of New York, and that's not conspiracy. That's real, unfortunately. The mayor of New York recently getting arrested, right? No coincidence there. I think we're going to see more of that stuff. And obviously Pluto is not just crime, it's about like sexual related matters. And so I think that we're probably going to see more revolving around people being implicated in some of these potential crimes. And whether you think about, what's been going on with P. Diddy, or what's, potentially connected to Epstein. Obviously we're hearing things about how Trump is saying that if he's elected, he's going to expose everything relating to the Epstein files, everything relating to the JFK files, everything revolving around like what's been happening with some of the wars. I think there's a lot of people who are probably shaking in their boots right now, afraid that if that ultimately ends up happening, that it's going to completely eradicate their ability to have any power and control. And I think that's really what Pluto is doing right now, as much as I hate to say that. I also feel like it's a moment of reckoning, that if this stuff has to come up, even though it's dark and it's ugly and it's scary, then so be it. It has to come up because we have to see where all the rot is, at the top, and who's been participating in things that are, yes, very unsavory, but also why are we giving power and energy and money to people who are doing things that are quite literally destroying our ability to have successful careers in the future, or our ability to have financial security, or to have homes or families, or, live in safe spaces. So everything that plays out over the next month, it is very, very, very karmic, because Capricorn is connected to karma. But equally, it is the breaking point where many of us are going to look around and go like, that's it. I don't care who it upsets or what it disrupts, or who I piss off, or, what I have to end, or what the results are. I just know that I can't do this anymore. And it's going to take a lot of emotional resilience to get there. So sending you guys lots of good vibes as you go through that. I feel it too. I'm not Superwoman. I feel it just like you guys. I'm certainly ready for it to leave Capricorn because now Pluto's trining my ascendant. So I feel like I've been through hell and back, But leave me your comments below. I'd love to hear from you guys, like, how you guys are feeling with this potential ingress. Like, what did you notice as Pluto went in and out of Aquarius? And where are you focusing on kind of breaking through? And what are you ready to kind of put an end to? Because in this next 2 weeks, this is where you have to kind of like put your helmets on and kind of like go into battle, because there's definitely going to be a lot of like rocks and rattles and rolls. Like I said, I do talk about this in my horoscopes, but I just want to remind you guys where This Pluto shift is taking place. So Pluto is waking up in Capricorn. Pay attention if you're a late degree Capricorn rising or cardinal rising sign. Equally, Scorpio risings, you're in the hot seat. As always, I am a Western astrologer. I don't practice Vedic. I practice Western tropical astrology. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to be using the whole sign chart. And I don't want you guys just to look at where Capricorn is. That's the area where you're wrapping something up. You also want to look at which house is Scorpio, because it's connected to that house as Pluto rules Scorpio. And get prepared to wrap something up in Capricorn, because Pluto's going into Aquarius. So something needs to change in Capricorn before this new coming change kind of happens in Aquarius. All right. So for my Aries, Sun, Moon, and Risings, how many of you guys are quitting your jobs? That's what I want to know. How many of you guys are like, I have had it with this boss, or I am finally ready to change my career, or I am finally, launching my own business? There is some big breakthrough happening in regards to your professional life, because it's in your 10th house. So it deals with your career, your public image, your life goals, and everything is under this major transformative pressure. And it can be good where one job ends and then your dream job appears, right? That's possible. It's also breaking through issues revolving around your status, your reputation, right? And blockages maybe where you've had revolving around making changes to your 10th house. Now, Pluto is connected to the 8th, so it can be money stuff. It can be about joint resources. It can be about taxes, inheritance. It's about maybe finally, retiring and dipping into your savings or your 401k. That's possible as well. So think about that connection. The truth is like Pluto's about to go into your 11th house. So for a lot of you guys, maybe you're moving away from like a corporate structure that's like really stuffy and like controlling, or a job that feels like it's just too much. And you're like, I want to go and work for a new company, or I want to go and work with a group of people, or I want to work for a startup, or I want to retire. I want to party, right? I want to have time with my friends. There's something changing in that regard where there's some huge shifts that are happening, and you're overcoming what has been a long-standing kind of battle maybe that you've had either with your career or some type of authority figure. And now you're shifting into focusing on your goals, your networks, building a company, collaborating with other people, like doing something that's going to be more based off of where you're going, not where you've been. Good luck, Aries. We've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You guys are having Pluto wake up in Capricorn. So the retrograde is about to end. It's been in your 9th house, and it's been in a fellow sister earth sign. So if you're like a late degree Taurus, Sun, Moon, or Rising, it's been trining you. So it's probably been easier for you to navigate. It's been empowering you, right? And Pluto's been going through your 9th house. So this has been about your belief systems, education, travel, maybe education. It can be about like lawsuits and legal stuff. It could be about like finally completing something. So some of you guys might finally graduate, right? You might finally go on a big trip. You might decide that you're going to teach a class, or you're going to publish a book. That could happen. And I feel like this is about undergoing major changes revolving around your beliefs, 9th house. And it can be your beliefs about your career. It could be your beliefs about life. It could be your beliefs about personal power even, right? And Pluto rules your 7th house of relationships and other people. So it can be like you're ending a relationship with a therapist, right? Or you're going through a separation, so you need a divorce. Or maybe it's that you're changing the way that you look at your relationships with other people. Maybe the way that you're presenting yourself to other people is changing in some way, where you were always known for one job and now you're going into another occupation. That's possible. Pluto is going to be going into your 10th house. So part of me feels inclined to tell you, since you're a fixed sign, that the shift starts with your beliefs right now. Like that, it has to start there. And if your beliefs can change, and what you're learning can change, or where you're traveling, or who you're working with can change, it's going to better set you up for this brand new 20-year period when it comes to your career and your reputation. But it all starts with your beliefs. And depending on where you're at, in terms of degrees with Taurus, I mean, if you're an early degree Taurus, Pluto's now coming in for a square with your Sun, Moon, rising. So that is going to be about the need to change. I feel like for you guys, this is about stepping into your personal power and being okay being seen in a different way. And that might mean that rather than being seen as somebody who's always been, solo, and now you're being seen as somebody who's a part of a team, or you're married, or now there's a new business partnership, it's like embracing that. Equally, if you are having a big change in your relationship status, it's about embracing that, kind of going out into the world, or working with a team, building a team. I've seen a lot of like astrologer friends that I have, and like other people that are Taurus risings, and like This reworking of who they are is now based off of who they're working with and the team that they're building or the company that they're building, you know? So it's like it's not all on them. It's like who they're kind of connecting with and collaborating with. So let relationships be empowering. Focus on what your beliefs are when it comes to your career, and let that kind of be what leads the way for some of the changes with Pluto and Aquarius. Good luck. Gemini and Gemini rising, you guys are wrapping up a Pluto transit in Capricorn. Pluto is about to go direct in your 8th house. And it's in a sign that does not always resonate with you. Okay, so, you know, Capricorn quincunxes you. So where Gemini is kind of more multitasking, communicative, kind of, you know, social butterfly, moving around, changing. Capricorn's a little bit more rigid, and it's a little bit more stern, and it's more difficult to create change. And Pluto at least is in a house where it does well. Like Pluto does well in the 8th house. When it comes to change and transformation, that is Pluto's realm. So issues revolving around transformation, or maybe shared resources, taxes, inheritances, intimacy, any joint resources with other people. Granted, Capricorn is career. So it can mean that you're overcoming fears of making changes in your career and like the financial implications or how that impacts your insurance or, you know, psychologically how you kind of approach change or intimacy, and changes with your partner's income, right? So Pluto going direct here is also connected to your 6th house. And this is like about where you work, your habits, the people you work with. It can also be about your like your sexual or your reproductive health. It can also be about toxic habits and things that you're ready to kind of like release and let go of. So that could be one way of looking at it. I think that for you guys, I would just really embrace whatever is ending right now, right? Because Jupiter's in your 1st house. So like new things are coming your way. And I think a lot of it is about career. And I think maybe it's about embracing a career where you're going to be more kind of in the hot seat, or you're going to be leading a team, or you're going to be working in a manager role, or you're like leading something in some way. Like you're kind of the boss when Saturn's in the 10th house. And what's happening here is Jupiter and Saturn are square. So it's like you're having to learn to kind of be a little bit more focused on your career, your reputation, and that can be good. And Pluto leaving your 8th house, going into the 9th house, can be saying like it's providing you with more resources, more wealth, more connection to other people, more opportunity to bring in, you know, benefits and resources, and totally radically change something about that. So Pluto will then go into Aquarius, and it's going to be in a fellow sister air sign. So something you have to look forward to is like, you know, Pluto going into the 9th house might be that you decide that you want to start traveling more for work, or that you realize there's power in, you know, learning some new skill or new habit, or maybe you decide that you want to get more serious about learning about health or wellness or service and how you want to help other people. And at least it'll be in a sign that's trining you. So actually Pluto coming into Aquarius, I think is really good for you guys. Expect radical changes in your belief system. Obviously, that's going to be a big one. And also I think it's going to be about breakthroughs in the way that you look at health in general because of the connection to the 6th house. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Gemini. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. For you guys, we are going to see obviously Pluto go direct in your 7th house. So for my Cancer, especially my late degree Cancers, I would imagine you guys are like over this transit. Obviously, you know, the 7th house is your one-on-one relationships. So relationships, partnerships, legal matters, you see significant shifts here. Let me just tell you, and I've said this in previous videos, if you're a Cancer or a Cancer rising and you're in a relationship that has been rocky, right? And you're kind of faced with having to make a decision. Do I stay or do I go? And that could be with a client. 7th house can be your marketplace, your clients. It could be with a business relationship. It can be with also your romantic relationships and your committed partnerships. This is that turning point. And I think I would take it a step further by saying not only that, but Mars is coming into opposition with Pluto. So it's less about whether or not other people will change, because you can't control other people, right? You're learning that right now. Mars in your 1st house is where am I going? What am I doing? What are my goals? How am I learning to be more assertive? And I'm going after what I want. And if they're not willing to change with me, then the relationship does die. Like that can happen, right? This is Pluto, guys. So you're seeing that right now if other people aren't getting the show on the road. Yeah, significant changes in regards to relationships. And for you guys, you might see that kind of extend a little bit throughout the Mars retrograde. I think that that's going to be a lesson. It's going to be about what's worth fighting for. Hopefully you're fighting for yourself. You're going in the direction of where you need to go. You're less focused on whether or not people are changing, and learning not to take everything personally, and learning not to just react to whoever is trying to kind of get your goat. Now, Pluto is connected to your 5th house. So it is about matters of the heart, your children, if you have children, how that impacts relationships, or your relationship with a child. It could be about a creative business and what you're offering other people. It could also be about expressing yourself emotionally or even like sexually when it comes to relationships and intimacy. And I think for a lot of you guys, this particular transit, it is challenging. You know, it's in an angular house and you're just seeing planets ricochet all over the place, which is like the actions I'm taking impact my home, my relationships, and my career, my status. And like, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But thankfully, you know, Pluto leaving your 7th house and going into your 8th house means that if you finally have to let that person go, heal that old relationship, cut them off, no longer let someone or something have power over you, then Pluto going into the 8th house is like, okay, now I can heal. Now I can totally transform. Or, you know, maybe if we do separate, then Pluto in the 8th house is now dealing with the assets. You know, what is yours and what is mine? And then you're dealing with matters of like some Cancer and Cancer risings will be like, okay, well, you know, I want my half of the investments, or I want, you know, child support, or I mean, unfortunately, that's what will happen for some people, that then there's going to be this back and forth revolving around give and take in resources. The positive is that it's no longer going to be in an angular house. And I think that in itself is worth celebrating, to be honest with you. But the challenge is that you guys are going to feel this extended just a little bit longer while Mars is doing its thing going retrograde. Okay? Good luck. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to be experiencing Pluto waking up in Capricorn. It's no longer retrograde. It's going to be direct in your 6th house. And obviously the 6th house is about health, daily routine, habits, your coworkers, you know, being of service, restructuring something about your habits in your day-to-day life. You get a little bit of a reprieve before Pluto goes into Aquarius, where it's opposing you by sign. Pluto deals with your 4th house. So it's funny. I think about like all like the Leo, you know, comments that have been made. They seem pretty bang on. You know, 6th house is like order, your to-do list, walking the dog, taking care of the kids, cleaning the house, getting your work done, going to the gym, like stuff we don't want to do, right? And it's because it's connected to your 4th house, it's like where health, a routine, and balance is really, really good for you emotionally. And where a clean and orderly home is going to be better functioning. And that's both, you know, in a sense of order and cleanliness, but also like emotionally, you know, you might feel like, okay, if everything's kind of in its place, I feel better. So this could be about reorganizing, restructuring things revolving around your office or your home, but it's also about doing emotional cleanup and the impact that that has on you. And if you're overworking or overdoing it, or if you're not dealing with emotions, how that can literally manifest into bad habits, or having health-related issues, or, you know, having to fix or take care of things within the home, that can be kind of coming up as well. Pluto is notorious for being connected with plumbing. Toilets, kitchens, garbage disposals, right? So like there can be stuff that's breaking and breaking down, or maybe there's something kind of going on where that stuff's kind of getting broken in the office, and then you're like, ugh, you know, now we have to bring somebody in to fix it, so I'm working from home. That kind of stuff can happen. Obviously, Pluto is getting ready to go into Aquarius, so for the next 20 years, it's now in your 7th house, so it's opposing your Sun, Moon, and Rising, which means now the change and the transformation is coming through relationship with other people, clients, relationships, you know, friends, Aquarius. But the 6th house is notorious for airing out problems. Like people always ask me, like, where do you see divorce? You know, for me, Uranus connected to the 6th house, Uranus aspecting the 6th house Lord, you know, planets going through the 6th house can indicate like, oh, there's some problems going on because this is 12th to the 7th. So if it's not health or organization related, you know, it can be, I'm airing out some of the issues that I'm having with people. And Pluto rules your family. So maybe you're trying to like deal with home or family things or roommate things or issues in a relationship. And then it's going to go into your 7th. And then it's going to be about confronting some of that. You know, hey, why is it you don't like my girlfriend? You know, or why are you being mean to my roommates? Or like, why is it that, you know, my mom and I aren't getting along? That kind of stuff starts kind of getting aired out. So you have the opportunity now to kind of recognize like, what problems are there within home and family relationships? What do I need to do? What can I fix? How can I work on it before it goes into the 7th house, and then it can become like a bigger ordeal where there's like a back and forth that you're doing with another person. okay? Good luck. We got Virgo and Virgo rising. You guys have Pluto that's waking up, going direct in Capricorn in your natal 5th house. And if you're a late Virgo rising, it's been good for you because it's been trining your sun, moon, or rising. So you've been feeling empowered throughout this transit. Obviously, the 5th house, creativity, love affairs, children, romance, these are all focal points, and these are all changing. And I think changing for the better. For some of you guys, Pluto going through the 5th house at this critical degree can be a big breakthrough in how you express yourself, or healing the inner child, or healing from heartbreak. It can be a big breakthrough where a hobby turns into a side hustle or like a thriving business. Big for creative energy, basically, or like where a romantic decision is made about a partner, or where the life-changing thing happens revolving around a child, right? That could happen. Pluto is connected to your 3rd house, which is about communication. So how you're communicating and connecting with your inner child, how you're talking to your kids, how you're going back and forth with a romantic partner. Are you guys discussing children? Are you finally completing or finishing a website, for your own business? Are you putting the word out that you've got your own business? Because communication is very much Pluto in your 3rd. It can also be like businesses that are connected to gambling, risk-taking. It can be investing related things as well. And so that can be like a critical turning point where you're learning a lot about this stuff. That's possible. I do feel like with Pluto getting ready to go into your 6th house, this is definitely going to be a radical change and transformation of your routine. So if you're making more time for creative businesses, or if you're having children, these things will radically change your routine for the next 20 years. Maybe you're going to be self-employed. So now you're like, I don't have that structure. Now I got to create it, or I need a space to work from. If a kid does end up coming into your life, or you end up getting pregnant, or there's some radical change with a child, it's going to be about, how you're kind of navigating your schedule and communicating and like dealing with these things and how it's impacting work. Certainly Pluto in the 6th house, you want to watch, because now it's going to be quincunxing your sun, moon, or rising. So this is where we become more aware of like negative habits and like bad habits and how that impacts our day-to-day life. And I think for you, it's either more mental because of Scorpio on the 3rd. It can also be about toxic ways of thinking and communicating and talking to yourself. It can also represent where there's a need to kind of quit a bad habit. So the 3rd house is like, do you bite your nails? Are you smoking? Are you always in like spiral worst case scenario mode? And like the impact that has on you, like mentally, or like your health in general. So these can be some things that can come up. Right now, I feel like having a hobby and a way to be able to kind of navigate some of this stuff, so it can be stress management, can be positive in preparation for Pluto inevitably going into your 6th house. But for many of you guys, it's going to be work change, location change, office changes, big changes revolving around also just your health and your habits in general. So right now it could be the tail end of like having fun and partying, and then Pluto goes into the 6th and you're like, okay, I have to kind of clean up my act a little bit, and you get a little bit more focused on health and productivity. Good luck, Virgo. We've got Libra and Libra rising. You guys have Pluto going direct in Capricorn in your 4th house. So if you're a late degree Libra or Libra rising, you're in the tail end of this Pluto transit. I'm so ready to bid farewell to Pluto here. I think, Pluto in the 4th house, one thing I will say is at least it's private, right? Like some of the stuff you're dealing with, it's like stuff that people aren't seeing. And whether it's people that you live with, or just your close family or your partners, or even you keeping it to yourself, it's not as visible because it's beneath the horizon. Nevertheless, it's in an angular house. And so let this month be a lesson to you, showing you from all angles what needs to be dealt with, and like what needs to be done. Literally, I joke, I say like Pluto in the 4th house for Libra rising is like what lies beneath, like what's really going on beneath the surface. 4th house, obviously, home, family, emotional foundations have been undergoing major transformation. Home changes with family, changes emotionally, changes revolving around security of the home, what you own in the home and property and resources and all that stuff. Pluto is connected to your 2nd house of possessions and money. So there is this sense of being like, okay, there's some critical turning points revolving around what it is you have in your home. And that might mean that you decide you want to get rid of a bunch of stuff, you want to donate it, you want to recycle it. That might mean that you decide that you're no longer going to allow the past and what's happened in past situations revolving around home and family to impact the way that you look at money or your own personal resources or values, or impact negatively your self-esteem. If there has been a long-standing issue with home or a family matter, right, then this is going to be a critical time for you to kind of deal with it. And I would just say, knowing that these planets in your sign are going to square Pluto means it's up to you to decide if you're going to say, okay, this ends here. I'm going to bury this. It's also coming from some kind of change in direction that's going to be taking place in your career or something revolving around who you are out in the world. That's going to get reworked to allow you to fully embrace this Pluto ingress. Now, the good news is, Libra, Pluto is going to go into your 5th house, and it's going to go into an air sign. So it's going to be trining your sun, moon, or rising, especially if you're an early degree Libra. So if you're like 0 to like 3, 4 degrees, this next year, Pluto's going to trine you, which means it's empowering you. It's empowering something about your body, your relationship to yourself, something about the way that you express yourself. It's going to be really good. And Pluto is going into a house where, the 5th house is one of the better houses. This is about love affairs. This is about creativity. This is about children. This is about self-employment, self-expression, hobbies, having fun, right? And like creating something and like being on stage and expressing yourself in some big way. So that's what you have to look forward to. But it's almost like you have to kind of clear space in your home before that happens. And whether that's emotionally or quite literally, you're making space for a craft room, right? Or you're starting your own business, you need an office, or you're having a baby, so you need to like clear stuff out of a room. Like something like that's going to happen in preparation. And it looks like you're dealing with the home and the family stuff before, Pluto goes into the 5th. And then it's going to be much more of a focus on 5th house matters. If you have children, it could be about the kids that you have. If you don't have kids and you're single, it could be like making room for, love and dating and romance and becoming very passionate about that. And also investing in strategy and new hobbies and things that you're going to become fixated and obsessed with doing. Okay? Good luck, Libra. You've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising now. What's up, Scorpio? Pluto rules you. All right? Things probably feel a little intense for you right now, so just take a breath. Obviously, when your chart ruler wakes up, you're in power. All right? So that's a good thing. Pluto is sitting at a critical degree in your 3rd house, and it's about to wake up. And the 3rd house is about the mind. What you say, what you think, what you write, what you learn. Vehicles, siblings, neighbors, it could be websites, blogs, other things like that, communication-based, short-distance trips. So Pluto waking up here means that there is about to be some significant, profound shift revolving around these things. It's not funny, right? I'm a Scorpio, so I know it's not funny, but I've seen so many Scorpio risings that are like, crashed my car died, my car got stolen, my car got broken into. Like, that's very Pluto in the 3rd, by the way. So pay attention to your car, transportation. You might have an iPhone that dies on you. There might be a crisis involving a relationship with a sibling. There can be some really difficult communication stuff that can be kind of going on here as well. But it's about wrapping something up, having the conversations you need to have with people. And that can be aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings. This could also mean a huge turning point in the way that you communicate. Obviously, Pluto at 29 in the 3rd house, there's a bit of a bite. So if you've been communicating in a way that's been too intense, right, it's going to be recognizing that and kind of realizing like, whoa, what am I giving power to? Where am I giving my power away? Or I'm getting intense because of what I'm thinking about or what I'm kind of stressed out about. It can also be about making these necessary changes like moving, right, or making decisions about moving before Pluto goes into the 4th house. And then obviously it's going to be in a sign that's squaring you. So what you have to look forward to for the next 20 years is radical changes within your home. You're Pluto, so you're making the changes. Some Scorpio and Scorpio risings are going to go, I'm moving to a completely different place. Or I'm going to buy a house and completely remodel it, right, and renovate it. Maybe it means that, you're saying goodbye to one home and you're moving to another. Maybe it means that you're starting your own family, right? It could be that. But Aquarius is weird and unconventional and unusual. So it does mean that you have to make the decisions now about where you're going, talk about it to make that process a little bit smoother over the next couple of years. And if you're like 0 to about 4 degrees of Scorpio, you're going to feel the square of Pluto next year. And it's going to be bringing up lots of dramatic changes, both emotionally, but also within your home and your family. But you are the one orchestrating that change. Good luck, Scorpio. We've got Sag and Sag rising. You are going to be experiencing Pluto going direct in Capricorn in the final degrees in your natal second house, Sag. I bet you guys are ready to say goodbye to this transit. I can only imagine. Pluto in the second house, values, finances, possessions, you know, these all require a reevaluation right now. Money stuff. How much like control does money have over you, right? Pluto is connected to your 12th house. Unforeseen financial circumstances, unexpected work expenses, unexpected changes going on with your job or going on with spending, or, you know, money kind of coming in, going out. How that impacts your security, how it makes you feel in a sense of your control over your resources, right? That's all very significant in your chart. And also like your spending power, your earning power. So Pluto leaving the second house, going into the third house is going to be really bringing up the themes of like, now you're making dramatic changes in how you communicate. Now you're making dramatic changes in how you get around town. You know, it could be car changes, it could be moves, it could be changes also in education. I could see, because Pluto's connection to your 12th, that some Sag and Sag risings are going to go into like talk therapy. Or they're reading books on therapy, or they're reading books on past lives, or metaphysics, or occult sciences, or metaphysics. So maybe you guys are learning tarot. Something for some kind of subconscious reflection, right? And at least when it's in Aquarius, it's sextiling your sign. So it's kind of supporting you. Like you and Aries are going to have that. So I think you're going to navigate this transit a lot better than it being in your money house. But I would watch expenses, because there can be some critical expense that comes in with Pluto at 29, or some big bill. And it can be, oh, I have to buy a computer, I have to buy a new car, you know, I have to move, like something revolving around like the third house there. And then there's going to be much more of an emphasis, obviously, on like critical communication skills and like being able to talk to your friends differently. I think some of you guys also, like second house is self-esteem. Some of you guys might be like, I'm ready to get off social media. It doesn't make me feel good. And then Pluto goes into Aquarius and you're like, I'm deleting my Facebook, or I'm getting rid of my Instagram, or, you know, I don't want to be on it anymore. It could be that. But watch the way that money and resources impact you. Watch how much fear you're giving to whether or not you have control over financial situations. And I'll take this a step further and say I really think this is the case, because Mars obviously rules your 12th, and it's going to start opposing Pluto. So there's a storyline here revolving around Mars going retrograde in your 8th of money owed, or joint resources, or mortgages, or debt, or, you know, paying something back or getting paid back. And Mars will oppose Pluto the whole time. So you're having to go back and forth with, is somebody paying you back? Are you getting the loan? Are you merging finances with someone else? Do you have to separate or sever resources? Do you have to look over an estate or a will, right? And like something like that, that's going to challenge the way that you look at control and like money. Okay, so there's going to be some back and forth there. So don't give too much power away, and don't see yourself as you're only as valuable as what you have in the bank, because you're trying to kind of overcome some of those views in terms of like finances and not equating to something, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Sag. Capricorn and Capricorn rising. I would imagine you guys are watching this and you're like wearing your graduation gown. It's time. You are graduating. Pluto is waking up. It's waking up in Capricorn. So that means for Capricorn Sun, Moon risings, you are approaching graduation day. You have passed your exams. You got your cap and gown. You're just waiting to cross the stage. That's what's happening. And what's cool about this is when Pluto wakes up, it's 1 month of you being like, look at how far I've come, right? Like the goat kind of climbing the mountain. Like, look at how far I've come. Look at where I am now. Look at how strong I am. Look at what I've been able to achieve. And so I think you really want to look at what you've done since 2008. Obviously, Pluto rules your 11th house of goals, friends, and also associations. So you might be getting recognition from groups. You might be joining major clubs or private kind of groups, or, you know, socializing opportunities. Maybe you're getting recognized for some of your achievement. Maybe this is like a huge breakthrough for you where your goals have changed. It can also mean that you're breaking away from certain friendships, and that there are certain friendships that you're like, no, I don't need this anymore. And Pluto can be about like grieving, like, oh, you know, I thought I'd always be a part of this group, or I'd always work for this company, or I'd always be friends with this person. And like, it's not a fit for me anymore, and I've changed. And like, there can be a grief process that you can go through with Pluto there. But I think for the most part, it's an achievement kind of vibe. you're going to see Pluto go into Aquarius. So, you have to go through some major personal profound shift of some kind, breakdown or breakthrough, to then get to the second house and go like, okay, now that I've gone through the changes, how is this impacting me financially? So obviously the darker side of the Pluto transit is like, if you are healing, if you are going through a moment of crisis, if you are Mars in opposition to Pluto, separating from another person, and realizing that it's not a fit any longer, whether that's a job, friendship, or relationship, you're like, how does this impact me financially? Do I feel secure and safe? Do I feel like I have good, self-esteem right now? Pluto going into the second house is definitely gonna change that in a big way. I'll just tell you, after looking at a lot of Sag risings, like watching Pluto go through their 12th house, their second house for a number of years, the ones that are the most responsible, okay, not all of, I love you guys, but not all of you guys are really responsible with money, which is funny because Capricorn's in your second. Some of them actually are coming out of the transit much stronger. Like now they're coming out of it and they're like, they've gotten their butt kicked a little bit financially, and like now they know how to better manage their resources. And like some of them are coming out of the transit, like being in places they never imagined in a positive way. I have Pluto in the second house. I know how both ends of that spectrum work. And I can tell you that you're only going to get paid what you think you're worth. And if your self-worth is in the toilet, you're not going to get paid very well. So you have to really know your worth. That's the Pluto transit. Be mindful of how much power money has over you and what you're willing to do for money and who you're willing to align yourself with just to get paid. That's the advice I would give you. You'll be working on this for the next 20 years, but for right now, take a look at how far you've come and how much you've changed. And it's okay if your goals are changing and if you're moving away from certain people. And also look at your identity, look at your appearance, right? Like major transformations in your health as well. And also, obviously a lot of this is for some Capricorn risings, like anti-aging. So there's anti-aging focus right now, or healing the skin, or recognizing, whoa, I have gotten older, like what am I going to do about it? And so Pluto going into the second house means you might spend more money on food and supplements and resources and beauty and style that complements where you're at now. Good luck. All right, we've got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You guys have Pluto waking up in Capricorn in your natal 12th house. So this has been, you've been in your cocoon phase a little bit. You got like a little bit of like a brief taste of Pluto in your sign, and then it went back into your 12th house. So 12th house is your subconscious fears. It's solitude, spiritual growth, yes, being highlighted, what you do by yourself, what changes are happening for you subconsciously behind the scenes, what business stuff is kind of changing behind the scenes. Where you're traveling, where you're getting spiritual or religious, where there are, I think, big professional things changing behind the scenes. I think that's it. Especially, Pluto in Capricorn in the 12th is like, one phase of my career is ending and changing, but I'm building this bigger thing, that's going to become more visible next year. So it's still kind of in its cocoon phase. Pluto is connected to your 10th house of career, reputation, and power. And I've seen a lot of like CEOs have Pluto in the 12th house where like they just know how to run the whole company. They just know how to kind of like pull all the strings and do everything. And maybe you feel like you haven't gotten that recognition for what you've been doing yet, but people can't see it yet. They'll see it when it's the right time. Certainly something you're dealing with Mars going through the 6th house in opposition to Pluto is like you're having to kind of get all your ducks in a row the next couple months. And whether that's with your health, your schedule, if you're creating a new office or a new space, or you're building a new team, something's going on where you have to kind of get that in order before it's really ready to be, kind of presented. And I think you'll probably see that in the future, maybe as planets are going through Scorpio, maybe when Mars goes through Scorpio next year, maybe when planets are in your first house. But right now there is something where you're having to kind of put to rest all of your fears, your old identity, who you used to be, what you used to do, right? And like also like tie up all the loose ends business-wise before Pluto comes into Aquarius. And when it does come into Aquarius, this is a huge turning point for you where, then it's going to sit on your ascendant. Pluto then is bringing power to you. So maybe you're in charge of a new thing. Maybe you get some new recognition or kind of like stardom. Maybe it is going to be about then you're radically changing and transforming your appearance or your body, right? Or you're kind of breaking out of like these old kind of conceptions of who you were, and you're like defying it in some way. Obviously 12th house is healing. So emotional, spiritual, and also I think physical healing. So there can be like, you need more rest, you need more downtime. prior to Pluto coming into your ascendant. And like, and then it's there for the next 12 years if you're an Aquarius rising. 20 years for an Aquarius rising. So it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays out for you. I would say enjoy the time and the solitude while you have it. Ancestral work, meditation, reflection, rest, even like past life regression, anything we want to heal that's deep in our subconscious, we want to do it now, and we want to release that fears because something is ending and it has nothing to do with where you're going. You're just leaving that old identity in the past and you're embracing something brand new. Okay? Good luck. And we've got Pisces and Pisces rising. So you guys are going to be experiencing Pluto going direct, waking up in Capricorn in your natal 11th house. For you, Pisces, the 11th house is your social circles, your networks, your friends, your goals, your aspirations, and we are radically transforming them, right? We feel like it's like a critical turning point maybe for some of your professional goals, some of your friendships, some of your network opportunities. And it's interesting because Pluto's connected to the 9th. So it may mean that it's like a critical turning point where you're like, I have to go back to school and get my degree, right? Or I have to get accepted into this club, or I have to go and start this business. Traveling to visit friends, maybe major transformations of your beliefs about some of your friends and some of your goals can be shifting here as well. Maybe it manifests as like some of your closest allies and friends going through some big life changes, career changes, shifts revolving around their relationships as well. Because the 11th house is still kind of other people. Now, what's going to happen here is Pluto is then going to go into Aquarius. So, when Pluto goes into Aquarius, then it's going to be more about your solitude, your privacy. It could mean that you join certain groups and associations and then you have more friends that are kind of global. Or you're joining, educational groups or maybe travel groups or things revolving around like staying connected to people all over the world. But for some of you guys, I feel like there's going to be either a massive goal change or a change with a friendship. And then Pluto goes into the 12th house and then you're like, oh, my goals have changed. And now I'm becoming more interested in new things, or I'm studying new areas, or a friendship ended. And so now I'm kind of like healing from that and like letting somebody go. And also like reflecting on what do I do with this new profound, sense of like alone time. You can become very introspective when planets go through the 12th house. And also this is kind of like the collective, like karma for everyone. So there is like a sense of you being more aware and like feeling more of like what's happening in the world. And so you might become more spiritual or more focused on like spiritual like routine, and also like studying psychology, metaphysics, or the occult. That might be a theme. Astrology even, with Pluto in the 12th house. Private courses or lessons, or working with like a mentor, and also like being on like this like spiritual pursuit and becoming really obsessed and kind of focused with that as well. And Aquarius is more scientific, so it doesn't mean that it has to be like metaphysics. You might be like learning more about like physics, space, travel, anything revolving around like scientific data and like that kind of stuff, and the connection, the correlation, especially with technology or like environmentalism. That might be something that's like an interest for you here as well. So I hope that's helpful for you, Pisces and Pisces risings. All right, guys. Well, I'm very curious to see what happens over the next month. Really pay attention the next like day or two with those lunar activations and Pluto going direct, and we'll have one more Pluto moon conjunction in November, and then somewhere towards the 3rd week it's going to go into Aquarius and it's going to stay there. So leave me a comment below. I'd love to hear what you've experienced with Pluto and Capricorn at 29 degrees, what you think's going on in the world, how it's manifested for you in the Capricorn area of your chart. Especially if you are experiencing Pluto going over an angle or over a personal planet in Capricorn. It might be kind of cool to hear from you guys. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Any interaction really helps the channel grow. You guys can catch me here tomorrow. I'm going to be doing live astrology readings. We are going to be talking all about this up and coming full moon in Aries. So make sure you guys check out my community tab, sign up for reading in advance if you want to get a reading, or join my memberships, because level 3 is going to get a reading with me once a month. You don't want to miss this. It's going to be one banger of a full moon. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope things go well with this 29 degrees of Pluto and Capricorn. Let the change begin is what I say. Just kind of let it go. And I'll catch all of you guys back here next time. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.